I don't think people do what they love. I think they learn or inspired to love what they do. People have always told me, you're so lucky, you've always loved what you did. And if you look back, do you think I really love selling legal research online? That was my dream when I was 5 years old. That's what I love to do. No, I learned to be inspired. I learned to take my possibility and make it a probability. So you got to know your what, you got to know your why, make those possibilities your probabilities, and then every single speech I take is the most important part that nobody talks about, especially when you get to this woo-woo stuff, this spiritual stuff. I'll tell you what's the most important thing is how. Right? How are you going to do it? Most people think that happiness is enough regardless of how much money they have, what relationships they have, what they've achieved. They think that happiness is enough even over their health. And so I started raising the stakes to be happy. And I believed that my happiness would be achieved by a consistent, every day, persistent, without quit, pursuit of my potential. People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. The happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else? And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you. Say thank you before you go to bed, and say thank you when you wake up. And I guarantee you, if you can do that for 30 straight days, your life will change. Hey, well, thank you so much, Tad, everyone. This is incredible. I don't know if it's wrong to get fired up on your own intro video, but I am. And I am going to talk about what I think is one of the most important things today, and that's branding. Never before could we even fathom that an individual, even like myself, some middle-aged mutant turtle, could have access to 4.6 billion people the same way that multi-conglomerate networks had access to crowds and to masses of cities and countries of people. We now have, as an individual power, the ability to access everyone that is on the internet. And therefore, we need to take advantage of building a brand. And a brand is built by one thing and one thing only, and that's frequency. And knowing that frequency and understanding that frequency and practicing that frequency and posting that frequency and utilizing that frequency and understanding how to monetize that frequency for, hopefully, the purpose of good. There's 3 components to understand about frequency. And the first is frequency will have its own content. And to me, still the most important thing, whether it's on Clubhouse or Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, or any of these others, in person, on the phone, your content holds your frequency, and your content has to be well rehearsed with value, with authenticity. And that content is so important because if you do get the access, the content has to represent your frequency, represent you. It has to inspire or motivate somebody. And so most of the time when we're building a brand, we want to focus in on what is our frequency or what's the content of our frequency. And for me, what I teach people as they are building their brands is to think about lessons and stories that support those lessons. Remember, life is about lessons, and the lessons will keep on coming until you learn them. In fact, they result in pain to indicate that you haven't learned the lesson. And pain itself is not a stop sign. It's an indicator. It's an indicator that you have a lesson to learn, as I stated, but it's an indicator that you have a better place to go, a better position, or a better situation to be in, or make your situation better. And utilizing that understanding of content and knowing our content by knowing which lessons we've learned and the stories that apply to those lessons are an easy way to start building a brand. And if we tell those in person, on the phone, via email, and traditional and social media, you will see that content grow as it gets clarity, balanced, and focused. One of the things about content that's so interesting, Lou Holtz, the coach at Notre Dame, said one time, and I love it. He said, Dave, it's not what I'm saying, it's what they hear. And so many times we think our content is saying one thing and everybody else is hearing another. And so we need to practice that content as much as we can. The second thing that we have to examine beyond content is access. Like I said, most people cannot fathom. In fact, I don't think anyone can fathom the size, scope, and scale of the community in which we have the potential to access. But like everything else, entrepreneurship, any type of any finance, any type of brand building, we have to understand something called segmentation, because so many people have an unrealistic approach to access. They think that, overnight success is due. I met a guy about 4 years ago at the Super Bowl. I was helping his brother build a sports agency, AJ Vaynerchuk, and he introduced me to his brother, a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. And I didn't really know who he was at the time. And all of my media team was just so excited that this was the legend of digital media and marketing, Gary V. And as I sat down with him and talked about the possibilities of building my brand in the digital world, we looked at things, and his first question to me is, what's your objective? What is your objective? Who do you want to access? And I said, my objective is to access 2 people in my first year. I want 2 people to be ambassadors of mine. Now, I've lived my life in my mission of ambassadorship, meaning that I'm on a mission to empower over 1 billion people to be happy, and utilizing the form of finding 1,000 people like you to empower 1,000 people, to empower 1,000 people, 1,000 times 1,000's a million times 1,000's a billion, simply to be happy, because happiness to me is the strongest and greatest virus of all times. It's spread simply by witnessing it. It strengthens us mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. It'll even strengthen your immune system. So I'm on a mission to empower all these people, and all I want to get to that mission is 2 people by building my brand, by creating content that will teach people daily values and practices in order to effectuate that type of behavior to simply be happy. And he looked at me and he said, 2 ambassadors? You mean followers? I said, no, I'm looking for 2 people that will empower 2 people to empower 2 people. These are true ambassadors. They're going to tell people to read all the books, to listen to the podcast, to watch the TV shows I do, to watch me on stage, to watch the content, to come to the free Friday trainings every Friday. Whatever it is, they're going to be ambassadors. They're out there as support to empower others to empower others. And he said, well, it'll take a lifetime to get to 1 billion people or over 1 billion people. And there's the problem right there with content and branding. It doesn't take a lifetime. Things that you stay and enjoy the consistent, persistent pursuit of gets exponential results. It compounds in interest, just like money, just like habits. They compound in interest. 2 people the first year become 4 the second, become 8 the third, become 16 the fourth, and 32 in the 5th year. The problem is only the 1% of the 1% can withstand building a brand. Only the 1% of the 1% don't quit. And that's because our mindset always goes to math that is not
irrational. It's logical. So if I told you it would take you 20 years to get to 2 million people, getting 2 million people and exponentially grow from there very shortly to over 1 billion people, and I asked you how long it would take to get halfway there, everyone would tell me, well, 20 years to get to 2 million, it would take you 10 years to be halfway there. No, that's why everybody quits. When you're building a brand, you have to realize that you have to put in 90% of the effort to get to 25% of the way there. So in my circumstance, what I wanted to build, it was going to be 18 years before I got to 25% of the way there. In year 19, I'd be 50% of the way there. In year 20, I'd be 100% of the way there. Compound interest and exponential growth is a deterrent or an interference for people logically to understand what it takes to get it done. Whether it's your brand, whether it's your business, whether it's your habits, whether it's your finances, you need to understand aggregated exponential growth, compound interest in everything you do and be the 1% of the 1%. You cannot quit. And why is it so hard to quit? Because when you first start posting everything, everyone's going to tell you, who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? I have nobody watching. They'll laugh at you, scoff at you, make fun of you as you're building your brand. Whether it's for you, your product, solution, or service, there's no one knocking because you're not there yet. It's exponentially growing and accelerating. The minute you put a time frame on this segmentation, you create resistance. By understanding segmentation and allowing it to happen as rapidly and accurately as you can, you're speeding up the process. So instead of taking 20 years, it may take you 1 year to get 2 people, 11 months to get 4, 10 to get 8, 9 months to get 16, so on and so on. You're actually not only exponentially growing and creating compound interest in your brand, but you're accelerating the time frame by allowing it to happen, by detaching your emotions from the outcome and not listening to what you don't want, what's missing, or what other people want for you. These are all the challenges that we face when we build a brand, build a business, or create relationships with money, whatever it is. We get in our own way. As Tad was saying earlier, we are our only problem, and we need to clear the interference because we are health, we are wealth, we are happiness. We have to look at what are we doing to destroy or interfere or corrode our health, wealth, and happiness, not how do I get it. You already have it. You're already connected to the greatest source of light, love, and lessons. You're already connected and allowing it to come through you for others. So when we look at our content, who we want to access and how we want to access them, mediums, now we have the context of what our frequency will do. And there's 3 components of what we need to work on to build this perspective, to be the 1% of the 1%, to build a brand, a community, so that we can do, as we own that community and empower that community, whatever we want, hopefully for the purpose of good and happiness. And the first thing that we have to practice in our brand is the strength of our signal. So once we identify who the lessons and the stories and our frequency, the content that we're going to create, the access that we were looking for, and the mediums in which we're going to utilize, we need to strengthen that signal by understanding that it takes consistent, persistent behavior. It takes a lot of content. And to utilize that strength of a signal, the more content we do, and here's the problem. When we start posting content, we immediately think, because no one's listening, that we're posting too much. And then we keep on posting. And if you really want to listen to me and build a brand, you need to, in person, on the phone, via email, and traditional and digital media, continue to ask and attract. Meaning post, email, market, until people who love you, people who care about you, tell you that you're annoying them. The minute that your family tells you, and your friends who care about you and actually are looking at the emails and listening to your advertisements and watching your posts and receiving your text messages and answering your calls, as soon as they tell you, man, you are way overboard, you're doing way too much, you're annoying, now you know you just got started. Now you know you're at the bare minimum. You have created and entered the starting gate. That's how much we need to create a strong signal. There's so much noise out there that you need to continually, consistently, persistently strengthen your signal so that more and more people resonate and see you there. It does not happen with one post. So you need to, just like a muscle, work that out every single day to the best of your ability by utilizing a consistent strategy 7 days a week to make sure that you're strengthening your signal. And then the second thing that we need to do when we're building a brand and utilizing the frequency is understand our spectrum. Now, there's a lady that does this better than anyone else, and her name is Dr. Pimple Popper. Dr. Pimple Popper has a very strong brand. She has more subscribers on YouTube than the entire Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I market the Pro Football Hall of Fame, 272 of my heroes. You would think that there is no way between Joe Namath, Joe Montana, all the Joes, Mean Joe Green, and everyone else that exists, Troy Aikman, Steve Young, Warren Moon, all the guys from Lee Steinberg that have been accepted. There's no way that Dr. Pimple Popper has a larger spectrum, a bigger audience than all of the Hall of Famers combined. But she does, because she understands how large, or tries to understand how large the spectrum is. She's very specific. She pops pimples. Now, as much as I'm not a big fan of people popping pimples, and I have no interest at all in watching people popping pimples, she knows her spectrum. And she consistently feeds that spectrum. And although there's 4.6 billion people that are available and accessible on the internet via home, emails, and phone calls, etc., she has a minute audience of the 4.6 billion, but it's very specific. It's very specific to those sickos that like to watch pimples being popped. But regardless, whether you're opening presents, doing fingernails, whatever it may be, speak strongly to your spectrum. Understand the lessons and stories that you tell and who it will resonate with. The most common thing that I have with my brand is people will tell me, whether they heard me on Clubhouse or Instagram or LinkedIn or read my book or watched my TV shows or whatever it is, there was something about you, right? There's nothing new that I talk about. It's just at a frequency. It's like a radio station. I tune in, and the only way we can do that is have a strong enough signal and a specific enough spectrum. I know exactly what my mission is, to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. I know how to do it. I teach people to make a lot of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of fun. Very specific, and I pound it. I pound it through gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and inspiration. I have 5 daily practices of the what, the who, the how, the now, and the why. All of those things I keep pounding and pounding and pounding into a specific spectrum of that think and grow rich crowd, people that can blend, I call it a temperance, between a ferocious living business attitude and a Buddha, right? I am a ferocious Buddha, and that is my spectrum. You are not going to find your spectrum without testing and learning and expanding and growing and strengthening your frequency and your own strengthened signal, and knowing that spectrum and learning from that spectrum. The last component of this is to get clarity. Just as Lou Holt says, not what I say, it's what people hear. I can't tell you how many times I think I know what I'm saying. It takes so much practice to hone things down in order to effectuate credibility, emotional attachment, and the ability to articulate clearly, articulate the value that you're giving to exceed the value you're asking for. A crucial equation in all business. Can you clearly articulate and quantify in that articulation the value you're giving to be greater than that which you're asking? Because if you do, everybody will say yes. And if you say it with that strength and in that spectrum of people that have open minds towards what you're talking about, telling stories and teaching lessons about, like popping pimples, you will have statistical success and you will exponentially grow at an accelerated rate, whether it be your brand for you, your product, your solution, or your service, guaranteed. Understanding your content, the access and the medians, the strength of your signal, the spectrum, and the clarity of your message are essential to understanding your frequency in order to brand it. Now, Practically, when we know our lessons and stories, and we know that we're on a journey of enjoying the consistent, persistent pursuit of our potential, knowing that it will never end, that we are happy where we're at, we'll angle to where we want to be with our brand, whether it be your product, service, solution, or you, but we need to have faith that we'll end up somewhere better. And there's 4 things you need to do pragmatically, practically, to build your brand and find your frequency. And in that pragmatic way, number 1, it's the easiest. You need to capture your lessons and stories. You need to capture your frequency. If you are not capturing, whether it be with your iPhone or cameras or camera people, Zoom, any of these platforms, you need to capture as much content as you can. And then, number 2, you need to learn to modify that content. You know, I have 2 shows. I have Elevator Pitch, which is on Entrepreneur and Cheddar. And then I have a Bloomberg television show, which is also on Amazon Prime, called 2 Minute Drill. Credibility for being on Bloomberg, emotional attachment, a pitch show with $50,000 of cash and prizes for every winner of every episode. We got celebrities, athletes, entertainers. Amazing success. As successful as the show is, it's remarkable to me as a brand that most of the people that tell me they love the show aren't watching it. Some of them don't even have Bloomberg on their TV or even have accessed it on Amazon. But what they have watched is all the modified content of the show that is specific to one pitch, one person, one lesson, one story, bite-sized pieces of the whole that we're able to effectuate and put onto sizzle reels and pilots and pieces and inspirational videos that are then shown amplified on all platforms. When you capture in person, on the phone, via email, and traditional and social media, what you're doing, and then practice and create a system in a matrix of modification, we then are able to amplify it through all of our sponsors and power sponsors that we have. Now, one of the huge assets that we have in branding today is that on average, most people have at least 1,000 people in their community. When I was growing up and I needed something, I would ask for help, and my mom would say, oh, you know, I have this woman in my card group or at the church group or, you know, in this group or that group. They were limited to 4 or 5 people at all times. If you're not exponentially growing your brand through the amplified channels that you have all available around us by simply shifting your mindset that there are no gatekeepers, that people are not laughing at you, scoffing at you, making fun of you, but in fact, they want to make an investment in you by helping you, and they're not going to help you unless you ask. One of the biggest new epiphanies of mine as I got older, whether it be in sales or business development or in life, I have realized that I'm a big fan of being more interested than interesting, doing my due diligence, getting alignment, taking action, then adjustment. But I have wasted so much time trying to find and seek the lowest hanging fruit. Who's best suited for what my articulation of quantitative value is, my ask? Who is it? I need to find that specific person that's the best person. And I blew it. I blew it because I started to realize as I built a frequency and a brand and understood what stories I tell and lessons I teach, that I don't need to find the lowest hanging fruit. All I need to find is an open mind. That once I shifted my mindset that people are not gatekeepers, they're not stopping me from what I want. I don't have to oversell them, back end sell them, lie to them, manipulate or cheat them. I simply just need to find people and see them as sponsors or power sponsors, people with an open mind, somebody that knows someone that can help me with an open mind, someone that can help me themselves and know someone that can help me with an open mind. When we start having an open mind and seeking people with open minds and surrounding ourselves with people with open minds, it's amazing how we have a collective consciousness of open minds that become a congruent helping of each other, which has an exponential rate of return, which is efficiency, effectiveness, and statistical success. So I am imploring all of you as you build your brand and do other things that we amplify things with one search for people with an open mind. Now you're going to sit there and say, well, how do you find people with an open mind? Let me tell you, you need to be more interested and interesting and ask what they're doing today. So what I do is I get alignment. I try to find people that have some sort of alignment with what I'm doing. And because we have access to so much information on so many people, I can see, whether it be a LinkedIn or an Instagram profile or listening on Clubhouse, if somebody has a general alignment with what I'm interested in. And all you have to do is ask them, what are you doing today? And then ask them, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And usually within the context of those three areas of questioning, you'll be able to articulate a quantitative value of how you can be of service to them. And then more importantly, you'll be able to ask them, do you see first any reason you won't want to move forward or me to help you with that? But two, most importantly, do you know anyone that can help me? Utilizing this templated system is statistically successful, but exponentially successful by finding someone that has an open mind. It is easier to convince, it's easier to convince 1,000 people with an open mind than it is one person with a closed mind. Regardless if they sit right into the best suited, best criteria of your lowest hanging fruit, statistically best prospect you could have. I will take an open mind over a perfect prospect with a closed mind any day of the week. And I will amplify through the questioning of what do you like to do? What are you doing today? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? How, would it help you if I did this? Can you see any reason you wouldn't want to move forward? And two, do you know anyone that can help me? That templated system, I'm more than happy to give to you. All this stuff, I'm more than happy to give to you. Do everything for free, so just reach out. The last thing that's so important in branding that a lot of people ignore is we capture it, we modify it for all the different platforms, we amplify it to all the open minds we can and have an ask to it, but we also perpetuate it. Because if a brand is going to accelerate and exponentially grow, compound in its interest, if it's going to be the 1% of the 1%, that aggregate is going to binge watch what already exists. My podcast, for example, The Playbook, has 650 some episodes. Episode 4 has more downloads this week than it had when I launched it because it's perpetual in nature. How many of us find a frequency that we like and then binge watch it? I now have a thriving system where my perpetual content builds on itself and builds audience and community. It strengthens by itself. It speaks to the spectrum and it clarifies my own message to the point that I've perpetuated so much content that I actually have my own search engine to search all that content. So when people have questions for me and I can't get to them, I just send them search.dmeltzer.com and they can find a video of me answering that question. So, please look at the perpetual strategy. Very few people today with brands are looking at a perpetual strategy, even though when they come home, they see their kids watching, Friends or asking them, have you ever heard of the show MASH? Look, this content is perpetual. Your brand, product, service, solution are all perpetual. And most people, it's like special teams in football. Most people are ignoring a third of the game. And a third of the game is the perpetual nature of that strong signal, the spectrum you're trying to reach, the clear message, that content that is filled with lessons and stories to the access in those mediums. So within the context of that, I have 5 daily practices that I want you to perform for that brand. And I want you to ask these 5 questions. Number 1 is your what. What do I want that brand personally to be? Experientially, giving what product value or service, and then receiving. What do I want for it? If you're not asking what do you want personally, experientially, giving and receiving for that frequency or brand, you're missing the person. Don't ask why. That's the last thing that we ask. Right? We can always learn to love and find the intention and attention of what we're doing. Know your what first. know what content, what lessons, what stories, what access, what mediums, how we're going to strengthen it, what we're going to do personally, experientially, giving and receiving. And don't be afraid of being a hypocrite. Don't be afraid of learning. I'm so, embarrassed to tell you that as I was building up my career, I was so afraid to tell someone I changed my mind. And everyone had certain snapshots of me, which is like the silliest thing, because the best thing you could tell someone is that you learned something and you were wrong, that you paid the dummy tax, because not only can you teach them, but you also can save them the time, money, emotions, and relationships that you probably lost with that dummy tax that you had to pay. So know your what. The second thing is know your who. In this amplification process, we talked about knowing our who with an open mind, but know your who, because the easiest way to get to where you want to be and to accelerate that brand is to find someone that's already there and ask them for directions. The easiest way to get to where you want to be is to find someone that's already there and ask them for directions. After you know your what and your who with your brand, then know the how. And the how for me is a combination of pragmatic and spiritual, pragmatic and energy. It is a mathematical equation of luck. The mathematical equation of luck is what you pay attention to, focus in on, and what you give intention to, think, say, do, believe, and even some unconscious competencies, personality traits, characteristics, obsessions, and addictions, they aggregate themselves. Attention plus intention equals coincidence. That's right. That's how people call it. Oh my God, what a coincidence. Oh, you're so lucky. Mathematical equation of luck. Your how is relegated by that focus and intention that you're putting into your content, the access and mediums to share it, understanding how to capture it, modify it, amplify it, and perpetuate it. The fourth one, probably the most critical. Now, I hate statistics. The only statistics that I like or used to think was true was 99% of all statistics are made up. That seems to be about true. I owned a golf course, and I learned a second statistic that is definitely true. That's 100% of all short putts don't go in and won't ever go in. But more importantly, the now philosophy of branding. 100% of the things you do now get done. 100% of the things. So many people, when they're trying to build a brand, find their frequency, procrastinate. They'll find every reason in the world to live in the world of liability, blame, shame, and justification, instead of moving above the line into accountability, where they are asking themselves, what did I do now to attract this to myself? And two, what am I supposed to learn from it? How does it affect my content, the access and mediums in which I strategized on? How is it strengthening my signal according to the spectrum I'm trying to address and clarify my message so they hear what I'm saying and it resonates with them within the context of what I'm saying? 100% of the things you do now get done. So do it. Keep on posting and enjoying the consistent, persistent pursuit of your potential. To finish up, the last thing about finding our frequency and building our brand is where Tad started before that video played. And that is the practice of ending fear. The practice of ending fear. I can't tell you how scared I was when I came up with my inspiration and mission in life, and even shared it with my wife, that I was going to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. That was going to be my life mission, is to teach 1 billion people to make a lot of money, help a lot of people themselves, and have a lot of fun and be happy. Even her had her doubts. There was so much fear to listen to what other people thought. Who do you think you are, Tony Robbins? What do you think you are, Jesus Christ? How can you date? What are you kidding me? You're a sports agent. How are you going to change the world? Are you kidding me? And once they laugh at you and scoff at you and make fun of you, eventually they'll applaud you if you practice ending fear. And so I'm going to give you the most powerful lesson for branding, for frequency, and for life. It's a 4-step process to practice ending fear. Number one, you need to identify what you're afraid of. There's 2 types of fears: primal fear, Freudian fears, and secondary fears. The secondary fears are completely relative to ruining your life. Time, emotion, money, resources, and relationships have been destroyed by the secondary fears that we have. We've accelerated in the wrong directions, creating void shortages and obstacles that we didn't even need. We've created our own interference to what we already are connected to, our health, our wealth, and our happiness. The secondary fears include, but aren't limited to, the need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be separate, inferior, superior, anxious, frustrated, angry, guilty, resentful. All of these needs only create interference and slow down what we're already connected to. We no longer have to live when we practice ending fear and can identify what we're afraid of. We don't have to live in a world of not enough where we're a victim and things happen to us. We don't have to live in a world of just enough where everything is for us and we buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. But if we can identify what we're afraid of and control these needs of the egos, we are able to live in a world of more than enough of everything for everyone. And so once we identify it, we simply have to stop, breathe through our nose, out through our mouths, drop down to center and neutral, finding our highest frequency, and then rolling in the right direction, the direction to make money, help people, and have fun. And I promise you, if you utilize these 5 daily practices, if you learn the lessons and tell the stories and create your content, create the access to an unfathomable amount of people living in between limitlessness and infinities, utilizing all the mediums that have been created and continually be created week after week after week, it will strengthen your signal. It will clarify where that spectrum is and clarify the message in order to get that frequency and resonation that you're looking for. You'll be able to capture, modify, amplify, and perpetuate you, your brand, your product, solution, or services brand, and you too will be happy. And if you're happy, then that will make me happy. I appreciate the opportunity. I think I left about 15 minutes for Q&A as suggested. Please let me know if that is what I was supposed to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a question from Melissa, and she asks, do you have a daily performance metric for yourself? There's part 2 to this question, so if you want to answer that one first.
I do. First of all, the day starts differently for me than anybody else. I don't believe in man-made constructs. I think they create resistance in my life. And one of the man-made constructs is time. So my tomorrow starts today. And the way that I utilize the criteria to determine what advancement I have is what's called a plateau and grow philosophy. Most people live their life like Camus' Stranger, the myth of Sisyphus. They push a boulder to the top of the hill all day long and it rolls down to the bottom in the next morning. So I start my day at 9 p.m. My day starts at 9 p.m. with an unwinding routine that is a setup for me to clear the interference for a connection while I sleep, to not only recover my embodiment and to set it up for the next day to plateau and grow, but to clear the connection subconsciously and unconsciously to what I believe is the greatest source of power, light, love, and lessons, so that when I wake up at 4 a.m., then I am now able to meditate, create a baseline for the day, a metric, a baseline in which I can determine whether I am going above that baseline with vibration, frequency, happiness, etc., or below it with resistance, scarcity, anger, void, shortages, ego, etc. I suggest, and goal for me, the metric is to spend minutes and moments in ego-based consciousness or fear and determining my happiness and success, the enjoyment of the consistent, persistent pursuit of my potential, by how many minutes and moments I've spent in ego-based consciousness, only created by, number one, relegating my start of the day to the day before, my tomorrow starts today, and 2, plateauing and growing, finding a baseline that is set that you know you can continue to grow from.
Absolutely. It looks like the second part of the question was actually something that you answered, which was basically how do you measure if you're doing the things that you need to do. So, Melissa, we asked you for that question. The next one comes from Steven, and it says, I have a podcast that gets few listens. Most days I feel like I'm wasting my time. But I like what you said about compounding. I'm torn between pulling the plug on a podcast or doubling down. Any advice?
Double down, double, triple down, quadruple down. Look, you're only going to get better. The audience is only going to get better. And look, a podcast is not viral. So look, everybody, it's not viral. It is an audience, a community that grows upon itself. It's also a business development tool. It also has other aspects of education and inspiration, and it's also perpetual in the nature. So, for example, If you do something else spectacular in your life and you continue to lay down and double down on your podcast, and 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, you end up inventing a spray that clogs up the environmental hole and everybody wants to know, and you now have 500 podcasts there, you've created an annuity and an asset for yourself. You do not have to relegate yourself to the man-made construct of time. Remember the 1% of the 1%. I'm a big proponent, everybody. You cannot fathom how big the size, scope, and scale of the communities and audience and the access that you have. You are making a big mistake if you're looking at the short-term benefit of creating content in a community. A huge mistake, especially if, I'm here to talk about brand and frequency, if that's what your objective is, to build a brand.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen, for that question. The next one comes from Mario, and it says, what are some of the best books, podcasts, or tools to learn how to build a brand?
Oh, wow. Well, gotta listen to the playbook. See, I believe it or not, the number one for me are a little bit different. It's Think and Grow Rich. I believe, I'm a frequency person and a brand person. You should read Think and Grow Rich every day. I believe in intention with brand. So, books like David Hawkins or Wayne Dyer. On strategic, I believe brands are built by habit, James Clear, Atomic Habits. There's also, there's Alter Ego Effect, which is really good branding books. For me, I look at human nature in order to teach brand. So I would tell you, read Ben Franklin's autobiography. It would have a better impact than some of, the branding books out there and digital branding books that are professing that they know what they're talking about. If somebody tells you they know what they're talking about, and I have a big brand and I have a great digital marketing team, but the one lesson that we've learned through digital marketing is it's mathematically impossible to know what the F you're doing. No, I'm serious. Once you realize the size, scope, and scale of the audience that you can reach, how can you, I spend $100,000 a month on digital marketing to reach this many millions of people. That's like a speck on the back of a dog. There's so many billions of variables that could be causing a reaction or an action to content that you put up. And I will just say humbly to everyone out there, I will put up a video that I love, or I'll put up content that I think is gonna change the world, and nobody likes it or listens to it or watches it. And I will put up something that I don't understand, and they'll edit it that way, right? Because remember, it's capture, modify. And I'm like, okay, and all of a sudden, everybody in the world loves this thing, and all this business is coming my way. So, you don't know F is my digital marketing strategy, but you have to do a ton and figure out and maneuver and angle towards the best that you can do. And the only way that you can do business is to consistently, persistently put up that content.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because it's so funny you say that, because I say almost the exact same thing. Branding and marketing is just a guess until it's not. So Mario, we hope you enjoyed that one. The next one comes from Robert. This is a fun one too for you, David, so be ready. What is your advice for managing emotional swings in business?
Oh man, I love this one. Well, I have those daily practices. I spend minutes and moments in ego-based consciousness. I see it as I stated, a muscle. One of the other things that I think has helped me in the emotional swings is, number one, realize that celebrating is just as bad as being depressed. I'm a toptimist. I'm a super positive person, and Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon was my business partner. And when we were out, he's like, you get so excited, man. You get so excited about everything. And he's like, just take a deep breath, Dave. You're wasting your energy. I'm like, I'm never wasting my energy to be super positive. What are you talking? I'm selling, right? And he said, Dave. And he showed me a video of when he lost the Buffalo game. And he was up 32-0 at halftime, probably the biggest defeat of his entire life. And he jogged off the field, and he was at center in what he called neutral. And he showed me when he beat Kansas City and set the record for the most yards, and 422 yards at the time, or 522 yards against the number one defense. And this was his celebration. And he said, who's wasting energy? On the loss, my biggest loss and my biggest success, who's wasting energy? You are. The energy that I waste celebrating or getting depressed can be used to get better, David. And that's why that man played football till he was 44 years old. That's why he was capable of doing, because he understood those emotional swings. So realize that neutral is your higher self, your highest frequency. And the most efficient way to stay in neutral is to practice ending fear.
I feel like he's talking to me. I'm just like, yes, absolutely, yes, absolutely. All right, well, Robert, there you go. There's your answer. Thank you for that question. Next one comes from Neil. It says, I'm starting a business. Do you have a process for thinking bigger?
Yeah, double it. Like remind yourself, I'm living in an instant between limitlessness and infinity. Let me give you a quick story. Jeff Bezos, 25 years ago. I'm a super optimist. I'm a super entrepreneur. I think big, right? I think big. Bezos tells me 25 years ago, if he did, as he's sitting in his garage, I'm going to sell these books on the internet, Dave. I know you've been selling legal research on the internet. I'm going to sell these books on the internet, and someday I'm going to be the richest man on earth and make $1 trillion. Now, I'm an optimist. I'm not someone to shit on somebody's idea. But I would have laughed when I walked away. I would have laughed at him and said, oh my God, Bezos is hitting the crack pipe. He is crazy. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I have a company we sold for $3.4 billion, and it was 100 and some years old, that took all of these current clients and put the books on the internet already. And I'm like, and we made $3.4 billion. How's he gonna make $1 trillion, right? From his garage. So I don't think the human mind, and remind ourselves this, can fathom the size, scope, and scale of infinity. Infinity of time, infinity of space, infinity of quantities, infinity of money. Other words, a world of more than enough of everything for everyone. So remind yourself, when you think you are reaching big, tell yourself double it, and then double it again, and remind yourself, I don't even understand infinity, so I'm going to keep on telling myself I can do double as fast as I can with no limitations or effort.
Absolutely. Neil, easiest way to remember, double it. That's what you got to write down. Just double it. Thank you, Neil, for that question. Next one is Maria. David, so you have 4 minutes left. There's 2 questions. Okay. I don't know how many. They just keep adding questions. And I'm just like, okay, there might be 3, there might be 2, but we got 2 and we got 4 minutes. Maria asks, I have a question on scaling. When do you know is it the right time to hire a new person?
So scaling, and I'll send everyone a document on scaling because I love my scaling document. It's learning stage, execution stage, equity stage. And the way that you scale employees is to use a learning stage where I'm a big fan of shadow me, work with me, let me shadow you, drop off, let someone shadow you, you work with them, you shadow them, you drop off. And this is how we scale people. Whatever the determinative time frame that it takes to get from a learning curve to an execution curve, to an equity curve where that person can teach somebody else. The learning curve's when you're done shadowing, the execution's when we can work together, and the equity is when you could teach somebody else.
Okay, awesome. Maria, thank you for your question. Last one is Candice. Can you expand more on what you said about social media? Does this ever backfire? And then in parentheses, keep posting until the people who you love are annoyed.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in my opinion, right, learning, you cannot find outside of yourself what you can find inside of yourself. The people that love you and care about you will be annoyed, but yes, it backfires if you're trying to listen to or please other people. One of the biggest things in my life, and I didn't get into my story because we were talking about branding and frequency, but I lost over $100 million, and people ask you, how you do that? Well, I'll tell you, because I was focused in on what I didn't want. I was focused in on afraid of losing. I was focused in on, most importantly, what other people wanted for me. All people really want for you, you'll trick yourself. You'll tell yourself what people want from you. My mom had a saying, right? Doctor, lawyer, failure. Doctor, lawyer, failure. I lost everything and had to go over $100 million. Only wanted to be rich to buy my single mom a house and a car when I was a little boy. 24 years old, I bought her that. Everything was derived around, I just wanted her to be proud of me. Doctor, lawyer, failure. I lost everything, had to go to my mom and tell her, not only did I lose everything, but I didn't take her name, put my name, I didn't put her name on the house. I didn't tell her I lost her house and she had to move. But she really only wanted 4 things from me. She wanted to know that I'm happy, that I'm healthy, that I love her and appreciate her. It had nothing to do what other people want for us. So especially in digital marketing, just don't take yourself so seriously. When people tell you annoy them, say thank you. I must be doing things right.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like I feel that especially when it comes to like when you are doing something, you're gonna have the haters quote, right? But I found that a lot of the haters are just people that don't know how to support you on the thing that you're doing. So if it's entrepreneur, the people that are hating you, they're just not entrepreneurs. So they have nothing else to say that's really positive because they just don't understand it, you know? David, thank you so much. That was the last question. You've had the most questions, just so you know. So can we hear it for David? Round of applause. Awesome, we appreciate it.
Welcome to Refiners. Refiners is an organization of business owners and business professionals that are looking to improve their business and personal performance, just like you. As a Refiners member, you will have the opportunity to build connections with like-minded individuals from your industry. Join our amazing community for free at refiners.io.